It's the After Show with Telecom TV's Guy Daniels and Ray LeMaitre.
Welcome to the After Show on Telecom TV. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and we are broadcasting live and waiting to hear from you at the end of day 4 of our Spotlight on 5G week. It's the final live after show of the week. Indeed, it's the final day of our 5G series. So allow us to help you unwind with our perfect remedy for the trade show blues. And we're joined by more of our favourite Telecom TV guests ready to answer your questions, so please get in touch and submit them now. As always, the after show is co-hosted by Ray LeMaitre, Editorial Director at Telecom TV. Hello Ray, it's been an unusual MWC for many of us. What did you make of the past 4 days?
Well, Guy, I think actually it's been a fantastic week. Though I have to say, I do hope we get to sit down in person with people before too long. Though, of course, it's still great to be able to talk digitally to the likes of Neil McRae from BT, who's with us here on this show, and Kevin Schatzkamer from Google Cloud to get their takes on what's going on. And their interviews on the telco cloud, the 5G cloud, are on the site today. My main takeaway, not only from this week, but I'd say from the first half of 2021, is the incredibly rapid pace of change in the telecoms industry, an industry so often accused of being too slow and ponderous. Well, I don't think that accusation can be leveled too much more anymore. It has to move at cloud pace, and there are signs now that this is starting to happen. And I think a lot of that is down to enterprise customer pull, as well as telco push and ever fiercer competition. This is one hell of a market right now, I'd say.
You're not wrong. It certainly is. And it keeps us on our toes, which is exactly what we need. Well, we started our day with the Strategy Outlook programme, which today focused on 5G cloud. And we've already received some questions on this topic. So let's find out who is joining us live on the programme today. Neil McRae, Managing Director, Architecture and Technology Strategy and Chief Architect for BT. Heather Kirksey, VP Community and Ecosystem Development with the Linux Foundation. Gabriele Di Piazza, Senior Director, Product Management, Telecom and Edge at Google. Fatia Nar, who is Chief Architect, Telco Partner Solutions for Red Hat. And stepping in at short notice, we welcome back Mark Gilmore, Mobile Connectivity Solutions at Colt Technology Services. Hello everyone, good to see you all again. If you've been watching any of our Top 10 Mobile Moments series, and if not, why not, you really should, you'll know that Telecom TV has a long history supporting MWC and 3GSM going back to 2002.
But can you remember your first MWC? Well, let's ask our guest for some of their highlights. So, Neil, when was your first Mobile World Congress, and do you have any particular memories of that first visit?
I don't remember the year, but it was when it was in Cannes. I remember two things. One, being kidnapped by a vendor on a boat, and that's what it felt like. And you couldn't escape the PowerPoint. And two, I think the same trip, pretty much, there must have been about 20 of the kind of lead technical teams for all the telcos stuck in the airport because air traffic control had gone on strike. I was sitting next to Fotis Koronis, who was Orange, I think, at the time before he joined the EE, and a bunch of other people, and we're waiting, trying to get home, all knackered and all getting increasingly more happy as we sampled the glorious French wine.
Absolutely. Well, I think, Neil, that memory, you could put that every other year for about the first 8 years, I think, of MWC. But yeah, the good old days of Cannes, absolutely. But needed to move to Barcelona pretty soon. It outgrew that town. So thanks very much, Neil. So Heather, what about yourself? When was your first MWC, and any particular memory?
Yeah, so despite being in telecom for about 20 years, my first MWC was 6 years ago when I joined the Linux Foundation to be the executive director of OPNFV. And that was it was our big public launch. And the main memory I have is that we had our big presentation, and it was in Hall 7. And the bus picking us up to take us for our very first in-person, board of directors meeting was going to be in Hall 1. And sort of me walking with our event staff to time how long it would take for us to get from Hall 7 to Hall 1, which is honestly a kilometer in distance, so that we knew when to tell the bus to come pick us up. And also trying to figure out how to get food into our governing board members before the board meeting started, so that we were not all hangry for our very first in-person board meeting, which ended up not involving any of the catering at the Fira, but asking catering to come directly to our hotel. But sort of managing and cat-herding a group of 20, board members through that kilometer, experience, also I will never forget.
Absolutely, herding cats through the crowds and trying to get the food you want. It's these are all part of the great memories that we all have of Mobile World Congress. Great, thank you, Heather. And Gabriele, what about your first Mobile World Congress?
Yeah, I have to go back to 3GSM in Cannes. I think I don't remember exactly. It will probably be 1998 or 1999, and I was still based out of Italy at the time. And one of the key things I remember is, of course, in addition to the hosting customers and the parties on the boats, but was to I arrived just that morning, and after the show, and just about around midnight, tried to find my hotel, maybe 30 or 40 kilometers outside of Cannes. And this was at a time where you would not have a map app on your phone in the south of France. That was pretty challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been there, wandering the streets, trying to find a taxi, wondering what town we're in. Yeah, but still good memories, absolutely. Fantastic, thank you. And Fatih, what about you? What about your first Mobile World Congress?
So first could be either as a visitor or a host. Being a visitor, MWC is fun usually, but being a host, long hours of day on your dressy shoes is really challenging. So one year I forgot my compression socks. If you know what I mean, as a host, I was walking through the Barcelona to find a compression socks for a man. That was not a good memory, but something I still remember.
Absolutely, yeah. These are the things we've already had some memories this week of people mistakenly taking high heels to Mobile World Congress and quickly ditching them. But yeah, the dress and the clothes you need, absolutely important for that show. I'm sure many people can relate to that. Fantastic. And Mark, we heard about your first experience, MWC experience yesterday, but just remind us which year it was you first attended.
Yeah, it was similar to Heather. Having been in the industry for a long time, it was actually only 2015 that I managed to get out there. But I've been there as both a vendor and an operator, and also made the shoe mistake, and to the point where I actually went and bought a new pair of shoes at the end of day one, more comfortable shoes that I could then walk around. Oh, yeah. So yeah, not just socks. I actually went and bought some different shoes, some soft shoes that I could walk in.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, and you can add me into making the mistake of women's heels, by the way, at my first one.
Yeah.
I wasn't wearing heels.
One year we'll all remember that we need to take a bike to get around the show. That'll happen eventually. Okay, thank you very much for all your stories. Great to hear them. But so let's move on to our first question of today's panel. Guy, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ray, and it is great to hear all these stories. Well, let's get to our first question. Today, AT&T announced that it's outsourcing its 5G core to Microsoft Azure, and this was just announced in the last 24 hours or so. So the question we've got in today from a viewer is, was this move inevitable, and will all other telcos follow? Not necessarily to Azure, but to the public cloud. Fatia, do you like to take this question first?
Sure. So technology is one part of the business, but there are two other key ingredients, people and the process. People as in the talented people, process as in the culture, tied with the technology. Here we are talking about the cloud as a technology platform that you borrow your infrastructure from somebody and put your business applications together with the team, enabled, empowered team with a good culture. If you want to see a good outcome, success, people, process, technology has to come together in a harmonious way and succeed together. On the other hand, though, life is, when you're getting older in the business, you realize some things are kind of repeating itself. If you roll back 10 years, telecom equipment solution providers or equipment vendors were so keen into getting managed services from tier ones and tier twos. And we saw the tier ones and tier twos in the US, some of them actually let their operations go to these equipment manufacturers as a managed services. And I remember I was there in Kansas, and the people from the operator side was kind of having mixed feelings about what's going to happen. And fast forward, 6 years later, the same operator threw a party to get those people back in, and they call it operations coming home. So, long story short, we will live and learn. Is it inevitable? Depends if these pioneers are succeeding or not. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And it's good to bring up the managed services angle there as well. I'm sure that all of you want to probably contribute to this, but Heather, let me turn to you first.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and kind of following on, what Fatih just said, to me, sort of the public cloud vendors as a strategic partner, strategic vendor, that to me wasn't surprising, right? Like, we've had managed services in the past, we've had, the equipment vendors, doing a lot of the providing of the network and the technology. What gobsmacked me yesterday was the sale of it to Azure. And to me, that really was surprising. And I would expect more strategic partnerships with the managed cloud vendors, but the outright sale, it gobsmacked. And I think it has a lot of implications in terms of technology processes, what it means to be an operator, what it means to be a vendor. I think it's blurring those lines. It's blurring the lines between hyperscalers, enterprise, operators. I think, if more people do follow suit and sell to something like a public cloud vendor, I think it has regulatory implications. I think it's honestly the fact that it's a sale rather than a strategic partnership, I think is fairly profound. And, I don't know what it means, but I'm very curious to see how it unfolds and if other operators follow suit.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And I think we're all in the same boat here. There's seems to be a lot more questions than answers at this moment in time, but it is going to unfold, and we will find out. Neil, you'd like to come in on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, probably no one knows really what's going on there except those involved in it. But, I kind of hark back to AT&T's Domain 2.0 strategy, then eCom, then ONAP. And it's one thing to have a strategy. It's another to be able to execute on it. And at least when I look at this looks like a series of strategies that AT&T just haven't been able to execute on. And in my mind, my fear is that more of us going that direction, because it's a way of potentially hitting something that you couldn't do yourself and you needed help. Is the model they've picked the right one? Time will tell. But I think is from my perspective, trying to encourage talent, particularly engineering talent, research talent, when you pretty much give away a lot of the technical challenges to someone else is going to be difficult. And I think the point made earlier about insource and outsource and what's core and what's non-core is probably going to rear its ugly head. But to give you an idea, I've had about 50 people email me saying, "Oh, when are we doing this?" And it just, I find it I find it kind of crazy that's just the default reaction to this. It was the same with ONAP and Ecomp. Oh well, when are we going to do this? And there's probably a lot of people scratching their head trying to figure out, well, what does this actually mean for those things? Because it's pretty unclear. The thing that I look towards is, what does it mean for AT&T's customers? Because that's where I would be focused on. What would this mean for our customers? What would it mean, when you dial 999 and there's a cloud outage, or 911? What does that mean? How does that work? Is someone phoning Satya? How does that work? Lot of things to figure out, I think, and probably we'll never know what the real drivers for this ever were.
No, you're right there, and I'm sure he'll be just hanging on his phone here, ready for customer calls and to solve those issues out. But as you say, Neil, AT&T's gone through a whole series of strategic initiatives and announcements over the recent 5, 6, 7 years. Mark, you'd like to come in on this point about the question about whether this move was inevitable and whether others will follow?
Yeah. I mean, when I read the report this first thing this morning. Actually, my initial thought was, what does that mean for the future of ONAP, for example? And, that being adopted by other operators that were essentially kind of following along on that AT&T kind of strategy that Neil just talked about. I don't think it is inevitable, actually, to follow suit. I think it's a bold move, for sure. I think the sales side of it, as Heather mentioned, is really, really fascinating. But I don't know. I'm skeptical of it benefiting in the long term for AT&T. It depends. We don't know the full detail. Yeah, I think it does raise many more questions than it actually answers, because I don't think that is the right approach for all operators. For Neil's point there about getting 50 emails, are they going to follow suit in that way? And other operators, I don't think it's inevitable. I think the partnership angle, and for more for different use cases or different scenarios, makes more sense. I don't think it's a them and us sort of approach. I do think there is space for both the public and the private cloud in this environment. So I think it's a fascinating announcement, and that's what happens when these big tier ones like AT&T move in this direction. But I don't think it's the right response for everybody. I think we've got other models out there.
Great, thank you very much, Mark, and thank you everyone for your thoughts on that question. I'm going to hand straight over to Ray, because I think we've got another question along a similar related line here.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. So yes, the second question is related. So it does relate to this big news from AT&T. Does this mean the dream of self-built and privately hosted telco cloud is now officially over? The question is, I guess it does follow on from will everybody follow suit, but what does this mean for the privately hosted telco cloud? Is this going to continue to be developed, continue to be adopted by operators? Gabriele, let's start with you here.
Yes, I don't think it's over, and we had this discussion earlier in the week. I think there's a change. We are definitely transitioning towards a hybrid cloud type of approach, which was also kind of far-fetched if you just look at 3-4 years ago, right? So I couldn't agree more that the industry is evolving very, very fast, and I do see the relationship and the collaboration between operators and cloud vendors, hyperscalers, becoming more and more tight, I would say. But a couple of comments. Number one, I think it is about talent. We've been discussing about telco cloud for a lot of time. I said in the past that there's been a lot of telco, not a lot of cloud. And the change I've noticed in this last year is that we are finally looking at infusing cloud thinking, cloud technology, in cloud talent, right? Both in research, development, operations, and scale, right? So the question is, I think you need to think of these two worlds coming together. So you do need the expertise, right? As Neil was pointing out, right? Years and years of managing, operating, and ensuring customer experience, but also how do you infuse that cloud, talent and thinking into this world? So I don't think the world is over. I think it will change. I think cloud vendors can provide incredible value, both technically, but also from, of course, the economical benefit of what scale of cloud can bring.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Gabriele. And Fatih, you wanted to come in on this as well.
Sure. So I'd like to look from the need of an application perspective. At the end of the day, what makes money is your application, which is in essence the packaged business logic, right? If your application has certain needs, in telecom world, it does have special needs, let's be honest, right? Because of all the specifications, all the solution architecture, and so on and so forth. If your applications cannot be hosted as is, as of today, as of tomorrow, on an infrastructure that you borrow, then you will obviously need to keep those applications in-house where they accommodate well, where they are trusted, where they are performing well. I'm not saying these telecom applications will never be cloud native. We are living through that journey. But in my experience, not long ago, I was part of one of the biggest cloud vendors as well. And we were trying to convince these application houses to evolve into cloud native way. So they don't need those special treatments. Yeah, they listen. But did it happen? Not much. Would it happen? We will see. So long story short, if your applications demand special treatment, the only way to give a special treatment, if it is in-house, so you will keep your private cloud.
Okay, interesting perspective. Thank you, Neil. Let's come to you because you have the BT network cloud, a private cloud. So, is this still the future for you?
Absolutely, and we've got live services running on it. We're building more services to go on it. Does that mean to say we won't stick stuff in the public cloud? No, we've had TV in the public cloud since we started BT Sport. Back in 2014. So, there's a lot of noise about, for me, what looks like to be almost a kind of an insignificant point about one operator in the US. It's and I kind of fast forward. I always try and find the dots in a pattern. I kind of fast forward as what does 5 years from now look like, because of this decision, and right now. The hyperscalers see telco as a big kind of land grab. We want to grab this company, we want to grab that company, we want to grab that company, and they're all fighting. Every day, I'm dealing with Google, I'm dealing with Amazon, I'm dealing with Microsoft, I'm occasionally dealing with Oracle as well, who are definitely on the up. And they're all saying, Neil, put this here, put that here, or Neil, sign a contract that does this, and then actually can you add all these other things to it? And we're going to end up having to work with all of them, because I go back to the customer point. All of my customers are in the cloud, but there are also many customers not in the cloud. If I go to anyone in healthcare and say, hey, we're going to stick your stuff in the cloud, they're like, no way. They just don't want that at all. So, who I'm listening to isn't what AT&T have done. It's interesting, but I'm listening to my customers. I'm listening to what my customers want. I'm listening to what my shareholders, investors need in terms of return. And, I've said it many times, but the public cloud is so expensive. And in a world, if you look at the European market, telcos aren't doing particularly brilliant right now. And to add the cost of public cloud feels challenging to me, just based on my own kind of experience and knowledge. Of course, with the sort of deal that Microsoft and AT&T appear to have done, who knows what the economics of that are, and who knows if those economics are repeatable. Perhaps they are, perhaps they aren't. Maybe Google will announce that they've bought Deutsche Telekom's cloud tomorrow. It's a tough one. But I'm focused on my customers and hearing what they need, and what they need is for me to run my infrastructure, to give them the 5 nines that they need to deliver their services, and not to have any kind of doubt about when it goes wrong, who do I need to call, and that would be my big concern with this.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great point about the economics, because that there were some details shared in the announcement, but there was a definite absence of economic details. What kind of operating cost would be saved or is expected to be saved from this, and any other sort of financial details, and it will be different for every operator for sure. Mark, let's come to you, and then we'll go to Heather.
Thanks. Yeah, the customer angle is really, really, really important, because we're seeing that exactly, that that our customers, they're working with a lot of cloud providers, and so we're seeing real demand for multi-cloud sort of access and capability, and also for the hybrid cloud. A mixture of private and public cloud services. So I think there is a place there for telco to then provide that service with the cloud providers. And I think the other thing that comes with that is that there needs to be a cross-pollination of skills and efforts. That's why I say, I think the worst thing that either side, if we want to put sides in, that either side can do really is build a barrier there between, cloud on one side, telco on the other, because actually I think there needs to be a cross-pollination. One of the recent hires here at Colt is Jaya Dasmuth, who has a rich history in the cloud providers, not in Google, in Microsoft, and in others, to bring that different perspective into a telco environment, and it really is refreshing, and it really is powerful and useful, and because it helps then deliver what our end customers are after, and as operators we have that touch point directly to the customer. And that's what we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Heather, do you see this being the start of the end of the telco cloud, or is the AT&T example a one-off?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, it's so the way the question was phrased, right? The dream of a self-built, self-hosted, privately hosted network, and I'm not sure that was ever really the dream for most operators to begin with. I mean, if you think about eComp, right? So yes, AT&T did build a lot of that seed code internally, but then they turned it over to the Linux Foundation, and and let's not forget that a lot of that seed code for what is now ONAP also came from China Mobile. We tend to sometimes have a North America centric view of the world. Let's not forget how much of that seed code for ONAP also came from the largest operator in the world. And then, it turned over to the Linux Foundation. ONAP, for example, is being built right now by like 50 organizations and hundreds of developers. So, and for a lot of the open source, components, those are provided by vendors through distributions, right? And the large equipment vendors have always been providing stuff, into the telecom networks. So was self-built ever sort of the goal? I'm not sure, and in terms of like privately hosted, we just heard, the BT perspective of how much, is in public cloud, how much for them needs to remain private. To me, it's like there are various cloud options out there, and it's up to every operator to figure out how to use the resources available to them to deliver network and network services. And I'm not sure always having it sort of privately hosted was ever the dream either. It was like, what are the economics? What are the service delivery models, and what makes sense? And I think hybrid has always probably been the way that things would go. And so I guess I question whether that was ever the dream to begin with. And I think that the more that you have options available, the more you can make interesting choices and decisions that are best for your organization.
Yeah, and that's what we have now. More options for the operators, and they can choose which way they want to go and what is best for them. Absolutely. Okay, I think at this point I'll hand back over to Guy for the next part of the programme.
Yes, thank you, Ray. And after an intense first 2 questions, it's time now for the final instalment of our Telecom TV Uncorked series. And in celebration of the many after-show parties at MWC, Pierre Mansour of the Wine Society is taking us on a guided tour of Spain's major wine regions, selecting a different wine each day. So let's see what Pierre has for us today.
So final choice, we're going up the ladder now. We're now very much into fine wine country for Spain. This is the Society's exhibition Rioja Reserva. The Society's exhibition label is our flagship own label. And this is the Reserva Rioja that we do. Now, Rioja is an area that probably doesn't need much introduction. It's incredibly well known, even amongst, I think, non-wine drinkers. It has, done a terrific job in promoting itself, and that's because it makes really good, consistently good quality wines. The grape variety here that is the lead, the star of the show is the Tempranillo grape, and usually in Rioja, Tempranillo forms most of the blend of the wine, but they also use some other grapes to support Tempranillo. So a classic Rioja blend would be sort of Tempranillo and then 30% of other grapes, including Garnacha and some other local grapes too. The key thing that makes Rioja stand out and have its own sort of personality is all around the aging. So Rioja is the area that really, I guess, invented long-term or long, gentle barrel and then bottle aging before releasing the wines. And in fact, so much so that the aging requirements are enshrined in wine law in Rioja. So it was Rioja that invented the term Reserva, Gran Reserva, and Crianza. In fact, starting at Crianza, going up to Gran Reserva. And each of those terms, in order to call your wine a Crianza or Gran Reserva, you have to have aged your Rioja for a certain period of time in barrel and bottle. What does that do to the wine? Well, what it does, first of all, is it changes the color. So aged Rioja Reserva isn't really a purple color. They tend to be more sort of mahogany, garnet in color. The second thing this extended aging does is it changes the flavors of the wine. Instead of the wines being fruity, the wines tend to be more savory, often described as spicy or earthy or leathery. So you get this really lovely complexity. And the third element of aging is it softens the texture of the wine. So you get this lovely, smooth, soft texture. They're absolutely delicious wines that really add to the fine dining experience and have a sort of autumnal feel about them. They're very warming, cozy wines to drink.
Oh, well, this is a rather fine wine. I think Pierre's hit the nail on the head there. This is something else, isn't it? This would flex the company credit card at the next MWC. Look, it's after 6 p.m. in Barcelona now, so it's obviously wine time. And besides, it's the end of the show. Oh, cheers, Neil.
Where's mine?
And remember...
Why are you not sharing?
Well, we're there with you in spirit. We're with you in spirit. And remember, you've got to look for a Reserva Rioja, or a Gran Reserva Rioja if you're feeling particularly flush. That's what you're looking for. Next time you're back in Barcelona, There you go. Check the wine list there. Make sure you're getting the reserve one. And if anybody like a bottle of this, come on up to the studios. Open house for the next 30 minutes. Meanwhile, we have 2 more anniversaries to celebrate this week. Because today marks the 30th anniversary of the first 2G GSM call. 30 years ago today, as we reported on the slides this morning. And it's also the first iPhone shipped this week 14 years ago. Still got mine here. Doesn't work anymore though. And of course that was 2G. So congratulations GSM. 30 years since the first call.
It's also next month is BT's 175th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll
Get
drink
the
to
Rioja
that.
out for that.
I think I look good for.
That must be, Neil, why we look so young. Wow.
It is.
Excellent. Well,
Excellent. Yeah.
I love the fact that there are wine laws in Spain. Here in southern England, the only wine law is that you have to finish the bottle once you've opened it. Apart from that, everything is off. Okay, so I think that time is moving on. We should probably move on to the next question. So I think, Guy, you have this one for our panel.
I do indeed, Ray. Yes, here it is. Are we about to see a new wave of competition around offering new as-a-service platforms to telcos? And how would this affect the vendor relationships and the supply ecosystem? Interesting question there. Neil, would you like to take first stab at this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I think we've seen it for some time. Probably more on the kind of back office systems than the front office services. But for me, it's almost a dream because the promise of virtualization in cloud was around flexibility, but we really haven't seen that flexibility. But here's what I would love to be able to do. You know, vendor A, you're my radius vendor for next month, and then vendor B is slightly cheaper, so I quickly switch to vendor B. Or vendor C comes up with a new feature that I need, and I can slot it in and move all my customers all at the kind of blink of an eye. I think that would be fantastic to be able to do that. I mean, the danger is you know, how do we compete? And I think, you know, I made this point many times. If all telcos are is the dumb pipe, which I think is a real danger of in this sort of direction, then, you know, 5G might be the last G because we might not be able to afford to invest in 6G. So, you know, there's definitely a difference between commodity services like voice, where, you know, over time that's migrating into cloud solutions. But I think if we really want to make a return, generate a turn, and have money to invest, we need to think much more smarter than the kind of as a service solution. And actually engage with customers and understand what their challenges are and solve them in a more digital and automated way.
Thanks, Neil. So, you know, it sounds like there are potential benefits here, but you've really got to be careful. We've really got to think, is this the direction as telcos we want to go down? Gabriele, you'd like to come in on this point?
Yeah, I would say I think we will see more and more as a service type of models and vendors, and the landscape is changing. I just want to point out this is not new, right? There have been many other examples from OSS and BSS. So some of the, you know, Neil pointed out some back office as well, front office as well. You know, I was involved a lot in the media space for many years, where we saw the you know, as a service dynamic coming into content distribution as well, where the dynamic that Neil was describing actually happened in terms of, you know, how can I swap vendors based on cost, you know, maybe not every month, right? But maybe every couple of years or every year. I've seen post-production as well. So I would say that let's don't make it one and all. There are areas in telco cloud which are actually evolving there, right? But other areas, we've seen APIs, right? We've seen voice. I actually see this dynamic expanding to different areas at the edge, as an example. So I don't think it's a one single dynamic, but I think there is definitely a trajectory towards more as a service type of offering. But I don't think this relegates operators as the dumb pipe. I actually think it's quite the opposite. I think that operators can basically focus on the value, which is their customer relationship, the quality, how they shape, build, and market their services, and basically can leverage some of the baseline services to basically some of the companies that are involved in doing that. So that's what I see. It is a transformation, but it's not one single step, and it's not one thing. There are many areas involved in providing different areas in as a service platform.
Thank you, Gabriele. And Heather, you'd like to come in on this one. Will it change the dynamic of the supplier ecosystem? Are we going to see more as a service models?
Yeah, well, I was inspired by actually what we were hearing from BT in terms of, the fact that we're not yet in a sort of, being able to shift from vendor to vendor, easily. I think there's a way in which we've moved to cloud, but in a certain way, I think we've still been treating cloud the same way we've treated physical boxes, right? Like that the sort of dynamic aspect of software is not something that we've really yet taken advantage of. And so I think that there's both the sort of changes in the supplier ecosystem, but there's also the changes in how we interact with them generally, as an industry. And, and as we're talking about the supplier ecosystem and things, open source, I think we've been very, sort of distracted by the AT&T announcement. But to me, things like Magma, the sort of Facebook and OpenAir interface sort of generated code where the core network functions are now also available as open source. To me, like that has also a pretty serious impact that, I don't think we've realized the impact of things like that yet. And that on both the sort of supply chain as well as, where does software come from? And what are the business models around software and applications now that we've gotten to cloud? I think that the impact is still going to be unfolding for some time.
Thank you, Heather. As you say, trying to get away from physical box thinking and all the associated network diagrams and little maps and schematics has proven really difficult. Mark, some thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think the opportunity really is in the cloud and virtualization. I think opens up then the not just as a service, but actually to enable more service creation. And I think it gives us a bit more flexibility. And we haven't really seen that, but I hope for that sort of world, that it enables us to be able to do things more tailored and yet still retain the economies that are necessary to make to be able to enable a tailored or not bespoke service, but more applicable to what the end customer desires or wants, rather than just giving plain vanilla every time. But to enables that a little bit more differentiation in that, that elevates beyond the dumb pipe, as Neil put it, because that is a concern, that is a worry. But actually, connectivity is absolutely crucial. Everything that we want to be able to do in this world means that connectivity really does matter in that. So then it's building off of that that's the base point from which you can then jump off. And I think I hope for a proliferation of as a service sort of vendors that enable me then to work with them to develop new solutions and innovative options for our customers, with our customers.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Time is pressing, so I want to get on to our next question. And Ray, do you have another question for us?
Yes, absolutely, Guy. So the question here is, it's more of a statement, I think, followed by a question. There are too many options for the mobile network operator clouds. Where do smaller operators get help and advice, especially if they don't want to sign their platforms away to a cloud company. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking in the first part of the show about the major network operators, but there are many smaller tier 2, tier 3s. What about them? Fatih, let's start with you.
So this is a very good question in essence that you cannot commit into a particular proprietary platform, but you still want to have the freedom of choice. So you can move around based on your business dynamics, based on your traffic dynamics, and so on and so forth. Then you're more looking into the technologies out there available as a common denominator that you can reach either operator A, cloud operator B, hyperscale, whatever you call it. Then you realize actually you're looking into the open source projects, like Heather was referring to, right? So if these open source projects say Kubernetes, right? And then you look around, what is complementing the Kubernetes on top as GitOps, DevOps perspective, say Argo CD, Tecton pipelines. So you're now realizing that your core talent as a small operator is a know-how with empowered people to use and contribute these projects. So you're more becoming into a DevOps paradigm company as a small company, which is really dynamic because you can address what you need as a small company by means of your footprint, by means of your customer profile, and then picking these technologies and apply them on any hyperscaler as a soft agnostic platform.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great point there about the use of these open source groups in particular, getting involved there. Neil, let's come to you. Have you got any advice for some of the tier 2 and tier 3 operators about where they can best find out what to do in terms of their cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely starts with skills and having the right environment to nurture, engineers that are interested in, things like Linux and open source. I think that's crucially important. That, the first internet service provider that we created in the UK, we ran all of it on open source, and that was back in 1992. The whole shooting match was open source, and I learned an insane amount of coding, scripting, a dangerous language called Perl, even more dangerous languages called C and C++, how to compile kernels, how to hack network code, how to do a fork because you couldn't debug something that you had to keep running to keep routing running. So I think having the right environment that attracts engineers that can do that sort of stuff and kind of learn on the job a little bit. But then I think also there's some Linux Foundation, Usenix, some great organizations that nurture and grow talent like that. But also I think there's some other companies out there that you can work with. We work with a company called Canonical that's a tiny company but is massive in this sort of space. Red Hat, we've just heard from them a moment ago. They're another company to talk to. But download it and run it yourself. I've sitting in front of the Mac. I've got Kubernetes running on it and writing code. It's all about doing rather than reading the brochure and trying things and experimenting. I think is crucially important. And going out there and taking on the next generation of engineer, I think will really move forward. But then beware. Is a tier 2 or tier 3 going to differentiate on this? Perhaps not. Is it differentiating on other things? Maybe you need to focus on those other things if you really want to be successful. But I think partnerships is crucial, both commercial and non-commercial.
Okay, great advice, Neil. Thanks very much. And Heather, let's come to you. You've already heard some good things there about the Linux Foundation.
Yeah, I think some folks have already said some of what I would have said, which is that, the open source communities are actually great places to get advice, to collaborate, and to learn from each other. I think maybe a lot of tier 2 or tier 3s are scared off sometimes because they're thinking maybe to themselves, well, we're not building eComp. Do we have a role to play in an open source project, right? Is it only for the big folks? And to me, the question is no, or the answer to that question is no, because you get listened to as a customer, as an end user in the open source projects. And if there are ways that the open source code needs to develop new features or consider different architectures to meet the needs of tier 2s and tier 3s, it's open, it's there for us to do. And we have things like our end user advisory group, where the telecom operators get together and they talk about their challenges, and then they talk about how to go to the specific open source projects to express those challenges and get things changed and heard. And so for me, it really is a good place that tier 2 and tier 3s are not utilizing in the way that they could, because you will be listened to, and you don't have to have the huge resources to do something like build an eComp. You can come and you can influence by sort of your experienced voices and your needs, and that will impact the way that the sort of worldwide developers building the open source do things. And you can influence it so that they do things more tailored to you. And you also have the opportunity to come together in groups like the end user forums to talk to not just each other, but also to the big guys, and also to, it's a place where folks are very, very open to sharing their experiences and their wisdom.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Heather. So I think if there are no more comments on that question, back over to you, Guy.
Yep, thank you, Ray. Well, we have one more special feature this week, your after show. And we've been asking our viewers to share their memories of past MWC events all week. Hopefully you've watched our clips from 20 years of 3GSM and MWC in our Top 10 Mobile Moments series. Now it's your turn. So we've got some final selection of photos in today. That's definitely yours. That's a Telecom TV super panel, one of the long evenings in Barcelona.
Oh, look at that. A classic continental breakfast right there. Could murder that. Oh, big screens.
Very big screens. Yes, that's going to be up 2007, that. I think it's the first time we brought the screens to Barcelona.
This is this year. This is Cloud City at MWC this week. Oh, who's that?
Oh yes, and I snuck this one in. I had to sneak this one in. This is a classic hangover cure. Hot chocolate and churros. It's an acquired taste, but you can't beat it. Okay, fun over. Now, back to our after show. Time is really, really pressing here, but I think we might just squeeze in a really quick question. Let's give it a go, Ray.
Okay, yeah, okay. Very quick question. Let's see if we can get some very quick answers. Question is Kubernetes the only container management option for telcos? And if so, does it need to be adapted for telco use? Fatia.
Very good question. Kubernetes itself is not the end game. It's the start point where you start building your application platform based on your needs, based on your business realities. You may add cluster services, application services, developer services, and also complement with the multi-cluster management, complement with advanced security features and registries and so on and so forth. So long story short, Kubernetes is where you start to build your own application platform based on your needs, and definitely is not an end game. It's a continuous journey to improve and extend. That's where the Kubernetes power comes from. Extensibility, adding and improving the APIs, improving the cluster formations, adding and improving how you deploy and manage applications, say open application model that we have been talking the last few weeks.
Okay, thank you. So obviously a very popular platform, Kubernetes. Heather, are there options?
I actually sort of kind of following on, to what Fatih was just saying, I think Kubernetes is the starting point. But, in terms of does it need to be adapted for telecom, I think it's not in Kubernetes core. It's in, once again, that ecosystem surrounding Kubernetes. So, I think places where adaptation is needed are things like CNI and networking plugins, and the things related to Kubernetes around networking specific technologies are where there are some telecom centric needs that need to be addressed, and there are a lot of projects that are addressing them right now. They're maturing. And then I think the other place where telecoms maybe have some specific needs or specific performance characteristics gets into sort of the data plane aspect of your entire software stack. And I think that there's a lot of interesting innovation going on right there. There are a lot of data plane projects out there. And some very geared towards the performance characteristics of what operator needs are. And I think that those are kind of the places, rather than Kubernetes itself, where maybe some telecom specific innovation probably happens in that software ecosystem.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Heather. And Gabriele.
Yes, well, as you know, Google had a big part in the Kubernetes project. So I do think it is a foundation. Just following up on the previous comments, I think it is a foundation. Currently, the industry is leveraging this extensively. In addition to CNI performance and so forth, I would say there are other areas that I think where Kubernetes can actually be even more relevant. I'm thinking of automation, and I'm thinking of telemetry as well. I think there are applicabilities to the network which haven't been explored yet. But it also is quite the opposite, right? What I mean is that wouldn't be great if in 5 years from now we wouldn't have any more difference between, this application is a network function application, is a standard app. So I would hope there will be transformation in the vendors as well in actually embracing cloud nativeness instead of doing something different. I think that will simplify a lot how the industry goes by with this.
Okay, and with the rapid pace of change we're seeing, I wouldn't be surprised if that was coming even a bit sooner. Okay, thank you very much. Guy, back over to you at this point.
Thank you, Ray. Well, before we go, we've just got time to check in on our audience poll, which this week is taking a break from the usual technology topics. Instead, we've been asking you to decide who wins the daily Great Tapas Taste-Off between Ray and me. And if you've watched today's news programme, The Slice, you'll have seen us campaign for our favourite tapas, complete with homemade videos. It's becoming very, very competitive. Now, today's final choice was between Ray's Patatas Bravas, a Barcelona speciality, and my croquetas. Now, as I'm one up in the series, Ray needs to win this final contest to level up the scores. So let's now bring up our API-driven live polling data and see who has emerged triumphant. Oh! They think it's all over. It is now, Ray. I'm so sorry. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Thank you everyone who's voted for croquetas, which was obviously the favourite tapas of the day. Sorry, Ray. There'll be a rematch, I'm sure. Wait another 4 years, there'll be a rematch. This has all been a bit of fun, so look, we'll keep the polls open for the rest of the week. Give you all a chance to select your favourites. And unfortunately, that's the end of the show. We are out of time. So, thank you all our guests who joined us for this live programme today. We've run a little bit long, but it's been worth it. You've been great. Great answer to some great questions. And to our audience for watching and sending in those questions. Now, this may be the last official day of our Spotlight on 5G week, but we still have a surprise or two in store for you tomorrow.
Yes, join us for our post-event hangover show. Guy and I will be slouched over a coffee and maybe something in that coffee as we dissect the week's event and bring you our analysis of the news around this year's MWC. We have some mobile moments that didn't quite make the top 10, and we have a bonus clip for all you wine aficionados.
That's me. Thank you very much. And we'll also be hearing from a Barcelona chef who will be preparing one of this week's tapas taste-off dishes, easy to say, and showing us how it's really done. We hope to see you tomorrow for the post-event hangover show, so I'd best get ready for that now. For now, though, thanks for watching, everyone, and goodbye.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.